In the quiet dawn of Alberta, a perfect circle appeared overnight, etched into the earth like a cryptic message from an unseen force. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, as if the very land held its breath, waiting for something to unfold. No signs of struggle, no traces of heat, just a hauntingly precise formation that defied explanation. As farmers gathered, whispers of dread filled the chilled morning air. Their animals, typically restless at the break of day, stood frozen at the edge of the circle, refusing to step inside, as if sensing a danger that lay hidden beneath the surface. What had transpired in those dark hours? What force had come to claim this patch of land, leaving behind a riddle wrapped in silence? The untouched earth bore witness to something far beyond human comprehension, and the locals were left grappling with a chilling question. Had they unwittingly crossed into a realm where the ordinary blurred into the extraordinary? In the quiet dawn of Alberta, where the horizon stretched wide and the land seemed to hold its breath, the morning air shimmered with a palpable tension. The sun had barely breached the edge of the earth, casting long shadows that crept across the fields, illuminating a scene that would soon ignite whispers and fears among the local farmers. A perfect circle, impossibly precise, lay etched into the earth like a cryptic message from an unseen force. It was a formation that seemed to pulse with a life of its own, drawing the eye and sending shivers down the spine. As the first rays of light kissed the dew-kissed grass, the landscape held an unsettling stillness. The usual symphony of morning sounds, chirping birds and rustling leaves, was muted, replaced by an eerie silence that felt almost sentient, as if the land itself was caught in a moment of anticipation. The air was thick with an inexplicable heaviness, a weight that pressed upon the shoulders of those who dared to approach the anomaly. Farmers, clad in worn flannel shirts and sturdy boots, gathered hesitantly at the edge of the field, their breath visible in the cool morning air. "What in the world happened here?" murmured Tom, a burly man with hands roughened by years of toil. His voice, low and gravelly, seemed to echo in the stillness, drawing the attention of others who had come to witness the phenomenon. They exchanged anxious glances, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. The circle was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its dimensions were mathematically perfect, a stark contrast to the wild, untamed nature surrounding it. As they edged closer, the farmers noticed their animals, horses and cattle, standing at the periphery, their bodies rigid, eyes wide with fear. It was as if they sensed something inherent in the circle that eluded human understanding. The horses snorted nervously, shifting their weight from hoof to hoof, but not one stepped forward. They were drawn to the circle yet held back, an instinctual wariness coursing through their veins. The air was charged with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying, a vibration that whispered of ancient secrets and cosmic truths just beyond the veil of reality. "Maybe it's just a prank," suggested Sarah, a young woman with a sharp mind and a skeptical heart. But even as she spoke, doubt flickered in her eyes. The enormity of the circle, the precision of its edges, spoke of something far beyond mere human folly. It felt as if the earth was warning them, an unspoken message laced with danger. She could almost hear the soft rustle of something unseen, a presence that lingered just out of sight, a watcher in the shadows. As the group examined the circle, a gentle breeze stirred the air, carrying with it the scent of damp earth mixed with an unfamiliar metallic tang. The wind seemed to weave through the grass, whispering secrets that danced just beyond comprehension. It rustled through the trees, creating a sound reminiscent of distant voices, urging them to listen, to understand. But the more they strained to hear, the more the whispers faded, leaving only the haunting echo of their own uncertainty. "What do you think it means?" asked Jack, a wiry man with a penchant for conspiracy theories. His eyes darted around as though expecting answers to emerge from the very soil beneath their feet. Maybe it's a message from, I don't know, something otherworldly. The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with implication, stirring a mixture of fear and fascination within the group. The sun climbed higher, casting light into every corner of the field, revealing the stark contrast between the untouched earth and the chilling perfection of the circle. It was as if the sun itself hesitated to fully illuminate the formation, casting shadows that danced along its edges, enhancing the sense of mystery. The farmers felt an invisible weight pressing down on them, a silent challenge that dared them to confront the unknown. As they stood there, transfixed, a sudden chill swept through the air, causing them to shiver involuntarily. It was a strange sensation, akin to walking through a spider's web, where the unseen threads of fear and curiosity intertwined, ensnaring their thoughts. The feeling was palpable, almost electric, sparking unease as they shared worried glances, caught between disbelief and the gnawing sensation that something was indeed terribly wrong. "I can't shake this feeling," whispered Tom, his voice barely above a murmur, "like we're being watched." His words hung heavy in the air, resonating with an unspoken truth that none dared to articulate. The thought sent a wave of unease rippling through the group, tightening their chests and quickening their breaths. They scanned the horizon, searching for signs of life, but found only the desolate fields stretching endlessly before them, the distant mountains standing silent like sentinels. Suddenly, a sharp sound pierced the air, a metallic clang reverberating through the stillness. It was a sound that felt alien, out of place in the rural serenity they had known all their lives. The farmers jumped, hearts racing, as they turned towards the source of the noise. The sound faded as quickly as it had come, leaving behind only the echo of their own startled breaths. What had caused it? Was it merely the wind playing tricks, or was there something more sinister lurking in the shadows of the field? The moment hung in the air, thick with tension, weaving a tapestry of fear and wonder as they grappled with the enormity of the situation. They stood on the precipice of understanding, teetering on the edge of the known and the unknown, where the ordinary blurred into the extraordinary. In that fragile silence, the circle beckoned them closer, a riddle wrapped in silence, daring them to uncover the truth that lay hidden in the heart of Alberta's fields. The night wrapped around them like a heavy cloak, shrouding the landscape in a deep, velvety darkness that seemed to swallow all sound. The air was thick with the earthy scent of tilled soil, mingling with the crispness of impending frost. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the fields, illuminating the path to the circle with a spectral light that danced across the furrows of the land. It was as if the very earth held its breath, waiting for something to unfold. With each cautious step closer to the circle, the farmers felt the weight of the stillness pressing down on them. The sound of their boots crunching on gravel felt thunderous in contrast to the enveloping quiet. Even the crickets had fallen silent, their chirping replaced by an unsettling hush that seemed to envelop the night. It was a silence that vibrated, an unsettling pulse beneath the surface, as if the ground itself was alive, thrumming with an energy that defied explanation. As they approached, the shadows of the surrounding trees loomed like dark sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out as if to grasp the intruders. The smell of damp earth mingled with something metallic, sharp, and alien, an aroma that clawed at their instincts, urging them to retreat. But curiosity pulled them onward, a magnetic force that dared them to confront the enigma laid out before them. The circle itself, a geometric marvel, was unlike anything they had ever seen, its edges perfectly defined against the backdrop of swaying grasses. The plants within the formation were bent, but not broken, their green blades lying flat in a way that suggested something had pressed down upon them, an invisible weight that left them unscathed. The symmetry of the design was hypnotic, a chaotic order that stirred something deep within their minds. It felt wrong, as if nature had conspired to create a puzzle meant to be unraveled, yet forbidden to touch. Tom, the most skeptical of the group, took a tentative step forward, drawn by an impulse he could neither name nor resist. "This isn't right," he muttered, his voice barely breaking the silence. "It looks engineered." His pulse quickened as he bent down to examine the formation, his fingertips grazing the cool, flattened blades of grass, sending a shiver racing up his spine. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, an instinctive warning that something was watching, lurking just beyond the veil of perception. Suddenly, a low hum began to resonate through the air, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath them. It was not a melody, but a vibration, a deep, throbbing pulse that matched the racing of their hearts. The farmers exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to fear as the hum grew louder, enveloping them in an otherworldly embrace. It echoed in their bones, a call from the depths of the earth that urged them to listen, to understand, yet left them paralyzed in uncertainty. "Do you hear that?" whispered Claire, her voice cracking, barely above the hum. The unease in her eyes mirrored the growing dread that settled in the pit of their stomachs. The hum seemed to synchronize with their breaths, a rhythm that felt both alien and familiar, as if it was awakening something dormant within their souls. The night air crackled with potential, a charged atmosphere that hinted at the impossible, and yet they remained rooted in place, hesitant to cross the threshold into the unknown. The first crack of lightning illuminated the sky, a brief flash that revealed the full extent of the circle's intricate design. It was a pattern that spiraled inward, a mesmerizing labyrinth that drew their eyes deeper, as if it was a gateway to another realm. For a moment, they were spellbound, caught in the grip of something larger than themselves, the air thick with the scent of ozone and the weight of unspoken truths. Then, just as suddenly, the light vanished, plunging them back into darkness. The hum dissipated, leaving behind an oppressive silence that felt suffocating. The farmers instinctively took a step back, their hearts pounding in their chests, the collective breath held tight in their throats. The night seemed to close in around them, an impenetrable shroud that concealed anything lurking in the shadows. In that moment of stillness, a rustle broke the silence, sharp and jarring, like a twig snapping beneath the weight of an unseen presence. They turned, hearts racing, scanning the perimeter of the field for any sign of life. But the darkness remained unbroken, an abyss that swallowed their fears and doubts, leaving only the palpable sense of being watched. The sensation wrapped around them like a vice, squeezing tighter with each passing second. "Let's go," Tom urged, his voice a low growl of urgency, but the others hesitated, their curiosity still battling against the primal urge to flee. The circle loomed before them, an invitation and a warning, a duality that echoed the very fabric of their existence. What lay within that geometric puzzle? What secrets were waiting to be uncovered? As they turned to leave, a flicker of light caught Claire's eye. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but undeniably there, a pinprick of illumination that pulsed rhythmically, drawing her gaze back to the circle. "Wait," she breathed, transfixed, as the light grew stronger, a beacon in the oppressive darkness. The farmers stood frozen, torn between the instinct to retreat and the magnetic pull of the mystery unfolding before them. Little did they know, the night was far from over, and the true horror of what lay ahead would soon reveal itself, forcing them to confront not only the secrets of the circle, but the very nature of their reality. The air thickened with anticipation, an electric charge that promised to shatter the silence and change their lives forever. The air around them felt charged, as if the very atmosphere was vibrating with unspeakable truths lingering just beneath the surface of their understanding. Tom's heart pounded in his chest, a war drum echoing the primal instinct to flee, yet his feet remained rooted to the ground. The light pulsed again, a soft golden hue that illuminated the edges of the crop circle, revealing patterns that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. Each pulse reverberated through the night, a heartbeat that synchronized with their own, drawing them closer even as fear clawed at their throats. Claire could hardly breathe, her senses heightened, every detail magnified in the stillness. The wind, once a soft whisper, now carried a trembling electricity, rustling the leaves like distant voices murmuring secrets only the night could understand. She felt the hair on her arms stand on end, the chill of the evening air wrapping around her like fingers, gentle yet unyielding. The scent of damp earth and something metallic, a tang that made her stomach twist, filled her nostrils, anchoring her in a reality she could no longer ignore. "Did you hear that?" whispered Sam, his voice low and shaky, breaking the spell of silence. The sound was subtle at first, a barely perceptible hum that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the circle. It was rhythmic, pulsing, almost melodic, a haunting lullaby that beckoned them closer, despite the instinctive warning bells ringing in their minds. As the light intensified, the intricate geometric patterns of the crop circle became clearer, revealing a complexity that defied logical explanation. The crops bent gracefully, their stalks twisted in elegant arcs, forming shapes that resembled symbols from ancient texts, a language lost to time. The very geometry of the formation whispered of something beyond their comprehension, a connection to the cosmos that sent shivers racing down Claire's spine. Suddenly, a low thrum resonated through the ground, as if the very earth were alive and responding to their presence. It pulsed beneath their feet, a vibration that traveled up through their bones, igniting a visceral fear that coiled tightly in their chests. The animals, which had been restless before, began to panic, their frantic movements echoing through the darkness. They could hear the soft bleats of sheep and the frantic clucking of chickens, a cacophony of distress that punctuated the ominous stillness. "Something's not right," Tom murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "We should get out of here." But the words hung in the air, heavy and ineffective, as if the night itself conspired to keep them rooted in place. The circle pulsed again, and with it came a rush of wind that whipped around them, carrying with it a chorus of whispers, faint and elusive, yet undeniably present. "Did you hear that?" Claire's voice trembled as she stepped forward instinctively, her fascination overpowering her fear. The others looked at her, torn between worry and wonder, as if she were the only one who could hear the siren call of the circle. The whispers danced around them, weaving in and out of the fabric of their thoughts, and with every breath, the sensation of being watched intensified. They turned, scanning the darkness once more, but the shadows remained still, shrouded in an impenetrable veil. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a weight that pressed down on them, suffocating and yet intoxicating. The sensation of being observed, of countless unseen eyes boring into their very souls, was almost tangible, a presence that felt both alien and ancient. The light flickered again, momentarily illuminating a figure on the periphery of their vision. Just a glimpse, an outline that vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a trail of cold dread. They exchanged nervous glances, a shared understanding of the unspoken fear that gripped their hearts. It was not simply the light or the circle that terrified them. It was the realization that something beyond their understanding was at play, something that defied all reason and logic. As the light surged, it cast elongated shadows that danced across the ground, morphing the familiar landscape into an alien terrain. Each flicker felt like an invitation, a challenge, as if the very essence of the night was daring them to step closer, to unravel the mystery that lay within the circle. Yet, with every heartbeat, They felt the weight of their own insignificance against the vastness of the unknown, a cosmic tension palpable in the air. "Let's just take a closer look," Claire urged, her voice a mixture of trepidation and resolve. The others hesitated, fear etching lines into their faces, but something in her tone ignited a spark of courage. They stepped forward, drawn in by the irresistible pull of the circle, each footfall echoing the new rhythm of their hearts. An unspoken pact born of shared awe and anxiety. With every cautious step, the hum grew louder, enveloping them in a cocoon of sound that seemed to pulse in time with the light. The world around them faded into a blur, the trees, the fields, the sky, all merging into an indistinguishable backdrop as they drew closer to the epicenter of the phenomenon. The air thickened, charged with anticipation, and the shadows seemed to stretch and breathe, alive in ways that defied explanation. As they reached the edge of the formation, they paused, breathless, staring into the heart of the circle. What lay within was a tapestry of patterns that seemed to shift and change before their eyes, a living enigma that beckoned them to uncover its secrets. With the night closing in around them, they stood on the precipice of discovery, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down like a storm on the horizon, ready to unleash the unknown upon their unsuspecting lives. The air was thick with an electric tension, each breath laden with the weight of the unnameable. As Claire and the others stood at the edge of the formation, the hum resonated within them, vibrating through their bones and settling in their chests, a steady heartbeat echoing the rhythm of the light. It pulsed like a living entity, a silent yet powerful whisper urging them to step beyond the threshold of the known. The circle itself was unlike anything any of them had ever seen. Intricate geometric patterns sprawled across the earth, weaving in and out of one another like a cosmic dance. Each line glimmered faintly, as if woven from the very fabric of the universe, shimmering with a brilliance that defied the dark of the night. The plants within the circle were bent with a precision that left no doubt. They had not merely been trampled, but had bowed in reverence to an unseen force, their stalks arched gracefully without a single break. "Do you feel that?" whispered Mark, his voice breaking the heavy silence. He stood, with his hands shoved deep into his pockets, face pale but eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. The wind seemed to answer him, rustling through the fields and carrying a scent that was both metallic and sweet, something primordial that tugged at the edges of their memories, a hint of something long forgotten. It filled their lungs, an intoxicating mixture of fear and curiosity. "I feel watched," Sarah murmured, her eyes darting around as if expecting to find eyes lurking in the shadows. The thought resonated with each of them, an unspoken acknowledgement that they were not alone in this moment. The darkness beyond the light felt alive, whispering secrets they were not meant to hear, and the trees surrounding the field loomed larger, their silhouettes stretching like ancient guardians, either protecting or observing. As they stepped closer, the hum intensified, morphing into a low, throbbing sound that vibrated through the ground, reverberating in their chests. It was a melody of sorts, haunting yet beautiful, a siren's call that mingled with their racing hearts. The shadows within the circle danced, flickering and shifting as if responding to the sound, creating a visual symphony that compelled them to draw nearer, to touch the unknown. "Let's just get a little closer," Claire urged again, her voice barely above a whisper. Yet, it rang with a conviction that ignited a flicker of bravery in the others. They hesitated only briefly before stepping forward, crossing the invisible line that separated the safety of the known from the peril of the unexplained. The moment their feet touched the grass within the circle, a sudden stillness enveloped them, as if the universe held its breath. The light surged again, illuminating the intricate designs beneath their feet with an ethereal glow that seemed to pulse in time with their hearts. The air crackled with energy. Each breath they took felt charged, as if they were inhaling the very essence of the cosmos. The world outside the circle faded, the distant sounds of crickets and rustling leaves drowned out by the overwhelming presence of the phenomenon before them. "What is this?" whispered Mark, his voice trembling, not from fear, but from a deep-seated wonder that threatened to consume him. They could see their reflections in the patterns, distorted and surreal, as if the very ground was a mirror to their souls. It was a moment suspended in time, a fleeting glimpse into something profound and unexplainable. Suddenly, a sharp metallic sound sliced through the air, echoing against the walls of the night. The sound reverberated through the ground, sending a shiver up their spines. It was a noise that felt more like a command than a coincidence, a summons from the unknown that urged them to submit to the mystery unfolding before them. Claire felt an inexplicable pull, a desire to reach out and touch the glowing patterns, to understand the essence of what lay within the circle. But as she extended her hand, a gust of wind whipped through the field, rattling the leaves and sending a ripple of unease through the group. The shadows deepened, growing darker and more pronounced. It was as if the night itself was warning them, a primal instinct clawing at their senses, reminding them that some mysteries were not meant to be unraveled. "Maybe we should go back," Sarah suggested, her voice trembling as fear painted her features. The bravado that had momentarily gripped them began to falter, replaced by the chilling realization that they were standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable. They were intruders in a sacred space, and the weight of the cosmos pressed down upon them, an invisible force that threatened to engulf them. But Claire, drawn by an urge she couldn't explain, took a step closer, her heart racing. "Just a moment longer," she breathed, her voice filled with a strange mixture of longing and dread. The light flickered again, casting a fleeting illusion of warmth against her skin, yet the shadows whispered of cold and darkness, a juxtaposition that mirrored the turmoil in her soul. As they stood there, teetering on the brink of revelation and terror, the world around them shifted, the air thickening with uncertainty. The hum crescendoed, wrapping around them like a shroud, and for a brief moment they were suspended in a dreamlike state, caught between reality and something far beyond. And then, without warning, the light dimmed, plunging them into an eerie twilight, the patterns beneath their feet dissolving into the darkness. A wave of panic surged through them, the fear of the unknown thrumming in their veins. What had begun as an invitation to explore now felt like a trap, the very ground beneath them shifting as if it were alive. The shadows writhed and twisted, and the sensation of being watched intensified, an insistent presence pressing against the back of their minds. "Run!" Claire finally shouted, breaking the spell that had wrapped around them like a fog. In that moment, every instinct screamed at them to flee, to escape the grasp of the unknown that threatened to pull them into its depths. They turned and sprinted back towards the edge of the circle, hearts pounding in unison, the sound of their frantic footsteps echoing against the silence of the night. But deep down, as they fled, a question lingered. What had they stumbled upon? In their hearts they knew this was only the beginning, the first taste of a mystery that would haunt them long after the night had faded and the light had dimmed. The air was thick with dread as Claire and her companions stumbled through the veil of darkness, the pulse of fear echoing in their chests. Each hurried step along the dirt path felt heavy, as if the very ground was reluctant to let them go. The silence that enveloped them was no longer comforting. It was a palpable entity, pressing down like an unseen weight, wrapping around them like a vice. The wind whispered mournful secrets, rustling the dry leaves in a haunting symphony that sent chills racing down their spines. "Did you hear that?" whispered Simon, his voice barely above a breath. He instinctively glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting to see something lurking just beyond the reach of the meager moonlight. The distant rustle of corn stalks swaying in the breeze seemed to respond, a mocking echo of their own rising panic. Claire's heart raced as she strained to hear, the hairs on the back of her neck prickling with a sense of impending doom. There it was again, a low hum, almost like the groan of the earth itself, resonating through the night air. It was a sound that felt ancient, as if it had been there long before they had arrived, a reminder of something vast and unknowable that lay just beyond comprehension. "Keep moving," she urged, her voice trembling as she pulled the others forward. But the deeper they ventured into the night, the more the world around them shifted. The familiar landscape of the farm, the dilapidated barns, the crooked fence posts, seemed to warp and distort, shadows stretching unnaturally, as if the darkness was alive and actively conspiring against them. Suddenly, Claire halted, her breath catching in her throat. A strange light flickered in the distance, a soft glow that pulsed rhythmically, beckoning them closer. It was not the warm, inviting hue of a lantern or the flickering glow of a campfire. It was a cold, ethereal luminescence that danced like a will-o'-the-wisp, drawing her in with an inexplicable allure. "What is that?" she murmured, the words escaping her lips before she could stop them. "Stay away from it," Danny exclaimed, grabbing her arm, his grip tight and urgent. The tension in his voice contrasted sharply with the otherworldly beauty of the light. "It can't be good." But Claire felt an inexplicable pull, a cosmic thread weaving through her very essence. The hum intensified, vibrating through her bones, and she could almost see the air shimmer around her, as if the very fabric of reality was fraying at the edges. Her pulse quickened, not just from fear, but from a deep-seated curiosity that clawed at her insides. What secrets did that light hold? What knowledge lay hidden in its depths? As they hesitated, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, a subtle shift that sent a ripple of unease through the group. Animals in the nearby fields stirred restlessly, the sound of hooves pounding against the earth echoing like a warning. The familiar sounds of the night were replaced by a heavy silence, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "Let's just go home," Simon whispered, his voice barely audible. "This isn't right." He looked around, visibly shaken as if he could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon them, watching, judging. But Claire remained transfixed, her eyes locked onto the flickering light. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, and in that moment she could almost hear a voice, soft and seductive, whispering promises of understanding and connection. The allure was intoxicating, yet the shadows around them thickened, a palpable warning that rippled through the air. "What if it's a sign?" Claire asked, her voice trembling with both fear and anticipation. The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of possibility. "Or a trap?" Danny shot back, his frustration bubbling over. "We're in way over our heads. We need to leave." As if to punctuate his words, the light flickered violently, and a low, resonant hum surged around them, vibrating through their bones. Claire felt her resolve waver, the delicate balance between fear and curiosity teetering on the edge of a precipice. The light seemed to grow brighter, casting eerie silhouettes of the trees around them that twisted and writhed like dark fingers reaching out into the void. Suddenly, a sharp, metallic sound echoed through the night, slicing through the tension like a knife. It was a sound that resonated with something deep within, awakening a primal fear that clawed at their instincts. The air grew heavy with the scent of something metallic and earthy, a mixture that burned her nostrils and filled her with an inexplicable dread. "We have to go now," Claire shouted, breaking the spell that had held them captive. She turned, urging the others to follow, but as they sprinted back down the dirt path, her heart raced not just with fear, but with the desperate longing for answers that danced just out of reach. Behind them, the light dimmed, but the hum lingered, wrapping around them like a ghostly embrace. They ran, but the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, elongating with each step, as if trying to ensnare them in an endless night. Fear coursed through Claire, mingling with a sense of loss, as if they were leaving behind something vital, a piece of themselves that had ventured too close to the edge. As they reached the edge of the clearing, the pulsating light faded into the depths of the night, leaving behind a haunting silence that echoed in their minds. They stumbled, breathless, into the familiar landscape, but it no longer felt the same. The stars above twinkled with a mocking brightness, and the darkness loomed larger than life, a constant reminder of the mysteries that lay beyond their understanding. "What just happened?" Simon gasped, his wide eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and disbelief. "I don't know," Claire admitted, her voice trembling. But deep down, she felt a gnawing sensation, a lingering question that refused to let go. Had they truly escaped? Or had they merely scratched the surface of something far more profound and terrifying? The night stretched out before them, cold and unforgiving, and as they walked back towards the safety of the farmhouse, the shadows whispered secrets only the darkness could understand, leaving a chilling echo of uncertainty that would haunt their dreams long after the sun rose. The dawn of the next day broke with a hesitance that mirrored the unease swirling in Claire's chest. As the faint light spilled over the horizon, it painted the fields in hues of gold and green, but the beauty felt tainted, overshadowed by the remnants of last night's terror. The farmhouse stood silent, its wooden beams creaking ever so slightly, as if the very structure itself was grappling with the weight of the night's events. Claire felt the air around her thick with an unsettling energy, a quiet hum that seemed to vibrate just beneath the surface of the world. She stepped outside, her bare feet meeting the cool, damp earth, and inhaled deeply. The scent of wet grass mingled with something metallic, a reminder of the inexplicable experience that had unfolded just beyond the tree line. She shivered, pulling her sweater tighter around her shoulders, the fabric doing little to shield her from the chill that seeped into her bones. "Simon, come here," Claire called, her voice echoing against the stillness. She crouched low to the ground, her heart pounding as she examined the field just beyond the fence. The morning sun illuminated the landscape, yet her gaze was drawn to an odd pattern etched into the ground, something that hadn't been there before. Simon approached, his brow furrowed as he squinted at the bizarre formation that sprawled across the earth. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, his voice a mix of awe and dread. The design was unlike anything Claire had ever seen. Symmetrical circles intertwined with intricate lines, creating a geometry that felt ancient, almost sacred. The plants within the formation were flattened, yet not broken, as if pressed down by an unseen force. Claire reached out to touch the edge of the pattern, and as her fingers brushed against the blades of grass, a surge of warmth radiated through her, contrasting sharply with the cool morning air. "Do you smell that?" she whispered, turning her head slightly, trying to catch the scent of the air. There it was again, that metallic tang, only now it was mingled with a sweetness that felt almost intoxicating. It wrapped around her senses, drawing her closer, inviting her to decipher this enigma that had invaded their lives. "Let's get the others," Simon said, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would awaken whatever had left its mark on their world. They rushed back toward the farmhouse, the dread that had taken root in Claire's mind now blossoming into a mix of curiosity and fear. Inside, they found the others gathered in the kitchen, their faces drawn and weary, yet flickering with a hint of resolve. Claire recounted the bizarre formation, her words tumbling out in a rush as she described the intricate details that had mesmerized her. The others exchanged glances, their uncertainty palpable. "Maybe it's just some prank," Marissa suggested, her voice laced with skepticism. Or a natural phenomenon, Adam chimed in, though his eyes betrayed his doubt. But Claire could see the truth in their expressions. They all felt it. The magnetic pull of the unknown, the unshakable sense that something otherworldly was at play. The morning light illuminated their faces, yet the shadows seemed deeper than before, as if the darkness of the previous night still clung to them. "We need to investigate," Claire declared, the resolve in her voice surprising even herself. "We can't just ignore this." With that, they made their way back to the field, the sun rising higher and casting long shadows across the ground. As they approached, the strange geometry loomed before them, more pronounced in the daylight. Claire's heart raced with every step, each beat echoing the dread and anticipation that coursed through her veins. Once again, they stood at the edge of the formation, the air heavy with tension. They spread out, examining the intricate design, their fingers grazing the edges of the circles. A sense of unity washed over them, as if they were all connected by the mystery that enveloped the field. "I can't shake the feeling that this is a message," Claire mused, her voice barely above a whisper as she traced a line with her finger. But from whom? Or what? The question hung in the air unanswered as they continued to study the pattern. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes nearby snapped their attention away. The group fell silent, hearts pounding in unison as they turned toward the sound. A chill swept over Claire as the hairs on the back of her neck stood up, a primal instinct urging her to flee. Yet something compelled her to stay. It was as if the field itself beckoned her closer, a siren song echoing through the silence. As the rustling grew louder, Claire stepped forward, her breath caught in her throat. The others followed, an unspoken understanding binding them together in this moment of uncertainty. Just then, a low vibration pulsed through the ground, causing the earth beneath their feet to tremble. Claire stumbled, her eyes wide as she watched the formation shimmer, a flicker of energy coursing through the air. "Did you feel that?" she gasped, her heart racing. Everyone nodded, their expressions a mix of fear and bewilderment. The vibration intensified, resonating in their bones, and a low hum filled the air, melding with the metallic scent that had haunted them since last night. It was a sound that resonated with something deep within, awakening a primal fear that clawed at their instincts. Suddenly the bushes parted, and a figure emerged, a local farmer, his face etched with worry. "What are you kids doing here?" he barked, eyeing the formation with a mixture of fear and suspicion. "We saw this pattern," Claire explained, urgency in her voice. "We think it might be important." The farmer's eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer, a sense of urgency creeping into his demeanor. "You shouldn't be here. This place, and it's not what it seems. You don't understand what you're messing with." His warning sent a jolt of dread through the group, and Claire felt the weight of his words settle over her like a shroud. They stood at the precipice of something vast and unexplainable, teetering on the edge of knowledge and oblivion. As the sun continued its ascent, casting an ethereal glow across the field, Claire realized they were no longer just witnesses. They were participants in an unfolding mystery that threatened to consume them. The air crackled with energy, the shadows deepened, and the once familiar landscape transformed into a labyrinth of secrets waiting to be uncovered. But as they stood there, caught between the known and the unknown, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, lurking just beyond the edge of the woods, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And with that thought, a wave of unease washed over her, leaving an indelible mark on her soul. The mystery was far from over, and the darkness had only just begun to unfurl its tendrils around their lives. The sun climbed higher, a reluctant witness to the unfolding enigma that spooled out before Claire and her friends. The air thickened with an electric charge, a sensation that wrapped around their limbs like a shroud. As they stood transfixed by the shimmering formation, Each of them felt the weight of the unsaid, the fears that clung to their thoughts like the shadows cast by the trees at the edge of the field. "Did you hear that?" whispered Jake, his voice trembling as if the words themselves were too heavy to carry. The hum had deepened, resonating through the very ground beneath their feet. It was a sound that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth, a pulse that thrummed in time with their own racing hearts. The metallic scent grew stronger, mingling with the earthy aroma of the damp soil and the remnants of dew, creating a heady cocktail that disoriented them. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine, a primal instinct screaming at her to turn back, to flee this place that felt so foreign, yet oddly familiar. Yet she was rooted in place, her gaze drawn to the geometric patterns sprawled across the field. They were impossibly perfect, the lines sharp and defined, as if they had been etched into the earth by an unseen hand. Each curve and angle seemed to whisper secrets, ancient and profound, that tugged at the edges of her consciousness. The farmer remained tense, his eyes darting between the formation and the group, as if he expected something to emerge from the shadows at any moment. "You don't want to know what lies beneath the surface," he warned, his voice low, almost a growl. "The stories you've heard are just the beginning. Whatever made this," he gestured wildly, "it isn't something you can comprehend. It watches. It waits." The dread in his tone settled over them like a thick fog, and Claire felt her breath quicken. The world around them faded, the colors dulling as the gravity of the moment anchored itself deep within her chest. "What do you mean, it watches?" she pressed, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking louder would provoke whatever unseen force loomed nearby. "It's all connected. You see," the farmer said, his hands trembling slightly. "The lights in the sky, the disappearances, the whispers in the wind. People think they're just stories, but there's something much darker at play. You're not the first ones to be drawn here, and you won't be the last." As he spoke, the fabric of reality seemed to warp around them. The trees at the edge of the field swayed, though there was no wind. The very air felt charged, electric, as if the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Claire's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the hum that surrounded them, a rhythm that pulsed with an energy that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Suddenly, a sharp crack pierced the air, like the snap of a twig underfoot, and all of them jumped, their instincts screaming for them to run. But they stood frozen, eyes wide, scanning the darkness beyond the formation. "Did you see that?" Claire breathed, her voice trembling as she pointed toward the tree line, where shadows danced and flickered in a way that made her skin crawl. The farmer's face paled, and he took a step back, his gaze locked on the shifting darkness. "We need to leave. Now. This place isn't safe," he urged, urgency lacing his words. But Claire felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force that kept her rooted in place, as if the very ground beneath her feet was calling her to stay. "No," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "We can't leave, not yet. We have to understand what this is." She could feel the weight of her friend's eyes on her, a mix of fear and defiance reflected in their expressions. They were all caught in the same web of intrigue, drawn by a curiosity that burned brighter than their fear. As they deliberated, the atmosphere shifted again. A low vibration resonated in the air, climbing in intensity, and Claire's heart raced as she felt the earth beneath her tremble in response. The formation before them pulsed, a beacon of energy that drew her in, its geometric beauty both alluring and menacing. It was as if the very essence of the field had come alive, wrapping around them, ensnaring them in its mystery. Then, in a moment that felt suspended in time, Claire's gaze fell upon something glimmering at the edge of the formation, a small object, half buried in the earth. She stepped forward, her heart pounding, the hum growing louder in her ears, drowning out the world around her. "Wait," she said, her voice barely audible over the rising tension. "What's that?" Her friends followed her gaze, but the farmer grabbed her arm, a sense of urgency flooding his features. "You don't want to touch anything." But Claire was already moving, driven by a force she couldn't explain. She knelt by the object, brushing the dirt away, her fingers trembling as she revealed a small, intricately carved stone, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly light. The moment her fingers made contact, a jolt of energy surged through her, electrifying every nerve in her body. Images flashed in her mind, fragmented visions of a vast cosmos, swirling galaxies, ancient rituals, and faces of people long gone, lost souls reaching out across time. It was overwhelming, and she gasped, pulling her hand back as if burned. "What did you see?" Jake asked, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. The farmer's face was a mask of horror, as if he understood the significance of what had just transpired. "I don't know," Claire stammered, her breath quickening, but it felt alive. The implications of her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. She could feel the eyes of the others on her, a collective uncertainty that intensified the atmosphere's weight. As they stood there, a chilling realization washed over Claire. This was no mere phenomenon. The formation, the strange lights, the vibrations, they were all interconnected. Threads woven into a tapestry that hinted at something much larger and far more sinister than they could grasp. The farmer's voice cut through the tension, a desperate plea. "You have to leave. This isn't over. It's just beginning." His eyes darted back to the trees, and Claire followed his gaze, a sinking feeling settling in her stomach. The shadows seemed to pulse, as if something was moving just beyond the edge of their vision, waiting, lurking. And as the group turned to leave, Claire stole one last glance at the formation, the carved stone still gleaming in the sunlight, a silent promise of the mysteries yet to unfold. The darkness might have receded for now, but it was clear that it had not been vanquished. It was merely biding its time, watching them closely, its tendrils reaching out to entwine their fates. With each step away from the field, the overwhelming sensation of being watched enveloped Claire like a cloak. The mystery of the formation lingered in her thoughts, a puzzle that refused to be solved, a haunting melody that would echo in her mind long after they had left. The sensation that something remained, waiting, watching and yearning to be discovered, shadowed them as they retreated into the embrace of the familiar world, leaving behind the shimmering enigma that had altered the course of their lives forever. In the distance, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the field, and the wind whispered secrets that only the earth could understand. The fear of the unknown thrummed in the air, a reminder that they were no longer just observers. They were part of something vast and unfathomable, a cosmic mystery that had only just begun to reveal its secrets.